How lovely it is for us to be together again. It seems that there is so much work to be done these days. There always is, of course. But perhaps everyone, or at least many people, have come to a place because of the current situation where they can look at their life a little bit differently, really tap into the importance of it's indeed the preciousness of a human life, of a good life. These are rare and difficult to accomplish. It seems, when there are so many people around, it seems very normal that must not be very hard, because here we all are. But to go from even attaining a human birth to then awaken to a desire to become enlightened, this is rare. And I'm delighted to say that all of you on this video conference have that desire. So you are to be congratulated for wanting it. Now what is left is to walk the path, and to walk it well, to be open to new insights and learnings, and to open the heart, so that whatever you learn may in love be dispensed to all other beings. And I mean all other beings, not just human beings, all other beings. Most of you don't think when you go out in the evenings and you perhaps maybe hear, it's just getting summertime, soon you'll be hearing the insects making their wonderful noise. It is so beautiful. Do you know that somebody did a scientific study back in, I think it was the early 80s, where they discovered the difference in the relative degree of healthiness of plants who heard the insects singing versus those that were grown in a completely sterile environment where they did not hear. I mean, that chirping gives energy to the plants. So everything is connected. This world is actually you, and you are the world. Now, I know it seems the appearances are very strong, and it appears that you are all separate. Everyone has his or her own body. And animals are different from humans, and plants are even different from animals or human. They do appear that way. But always remember this: the life force that is in everything is identical. So part of it takes form as an insect, perhaps to nurture the growing of the plants that it will later eat up and sustain its own life. And those insects are very precious, even though I know a lot of people want to kill them all. It's not a good idea, believe me, because they nurture the growing of plants. So today I would like to provide a situation where we can all think about the preciousness of life on planet Earth. As you surely know by now, things are changing. The way life has continued up to this point is not sustainable, where some people have a lot of access toward resources. They have the capacity to earn a lot of money. They have plenty of food. They never want for shelter. And there are many, many more who find themselves in much more difficult situations than that, who struggle to just raise their children and see their children into adulthood. This is kind of the normal state of the planet. And I want to be a little bit careful, because it's very easy for us to think, well, look how wise humans are. They've created all these wonderful systems, and they've made life easier. That's true. But there has been a significant cost to the earth. Now, this is not only your home. Earth is, in a very real sense, your mother. In fact, the Divine Mother has imbued Earth with all of the fertility to bring forth what an array of plants and animals, even humans. And at one level, everything looks different. But my dear friends, that is an illusion. And perhaps for the first time, some of you have had more time indoors, staying home or staying away from groups. And I hope you are using this time well to really think about the purpose of your life. What are you doing here? No, everyone says, oh, yes, yes, I want to be enlightened. But if we look at people's habits, sometimes the habits don't seem to bear that out. You know, when you look at great beings, and I think of someone like Mahatma Gandhi. Someone asked me once what my physical form looked like when I was embodied. And I said, well, my face was different, but my body frame was a lot like his. I was thin and wiry, but full of energy. And when you think of great beings who were ready to sacrifice their life in order to make things better on the planet, this is what great teachers do. And yet so many people who are, let's say, inhabiting Earth, want to leave all of that to the great teachers. And what our message is to you, not only today, but as we go forward, as we actualize a new age, you must all become teachers. You need not think of standing in a pulpit somewhere preaching. You should preach with your love. You should teach with your love. Your love should guide not only your own life, but it should bless the lives of all with whom you have contact. And I think when I talk about things like this, everyone agrees, oh yes, 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 that's what it's all about. And yet how easy it is to forget. A struggle comes up, a problem, something that is irritating or frustrating, and one loses his or her grasp on the love. The heart closes a little bit. Perhaps even the mind closes a little bit. And the net effect is that one has shut down the wellspring of love. You know, it's not even really your love, is it? If you are my student, I pour divine love through you. And I'm glad if you can enjoy it, but it's not for you. It is for you to spend or share with the rest of the world. And that includes not only humans who are like yourself or humans who appear to be different from yourself. That's an illusion. But nonetheless, we have cultural norms that seem to say that one culture is different from another culture. And right now, you're living in a time where there is a lot of divisive energy being perpetrated by people who like humanity to be divisive, who like it when people don't see each other as their brothers and sisters, but who look upon each other as other and different and odd, and perhaps see each other as less than themselves. Well, we can look at the planet and see where this kind of thinking has brought us. Cultures, some of whom do not respect others. Some actually actively perpetrate division and anger. And all of this has to be dissolved. And what happens is people want someone to blame for the suffering they're undergoing. And rather than take the suffering in and learn from it, rather than allowing it to open the heart and open the mind, one of the tendencies that is very prevalent on the earth right now is to find somebody to blame for the problems I'm experiencing. But can you see what that does? That perpetuates a sense of duality. And it goes on maybe a tacit understanding that I'm the suffering one, so I'm somehow better than the one that I deem is to blame for this. And yet, even if you find someone to blame, how does that help you? Does it increase your love? Does it expand your knowledge, your spiritual knowledge? Does it allow you to be more present for other suffering human beings, suffering animals, and even suffering plants? Somebody told me once, oh, plants don't suffer. I said, wait a minute. You have a beautiful lawn on the yard around your house, do you not? And he said, oh, yes, yes, I do. I said, well, tell me, do you think that grass enjoys it when you run the lawnmower over it? Or when you have all your friends out there eating or playing a game where people are tromping on the grass, do you think the grass enjoys that? And then people will say, well, I don't think grass has feelings. And that's maybe because you don't know about grass. In fact, if you go back to the old standard teachings on the seventh rays of creation, the fourth ray is seen as the emotional ray. And this is where the plant kingdom exists on that spectrum. Do you think the wise ones of old got it wrong? I don't think so. There have been studies with houseplants, and the people that studied them had to use very fine instrumentation because, you see, plants don't have muscles like you do. So whereas you can raise an arm or pick up a leg, push yourself up from a chair, walk across the room, they cannot do that. And yet with very sensitive instrumentation, it was discovered that when the person who cares for the plants, waters, perhaps gives them nutrients and so on, puts the hand near a leaf, it moves ever so slightly toward that hand. It's looking for connection, you see? Now, if plants were unemotional or had no feeling or were just something there for humans to walk on, that would not be the case. So it's time, my dear friends, you have to take a bigger perspective if you want to use this time well. And you have this time so that you can wake up, that you can see not only your personal reality, but the reality of the divine trying to manifest under a very difficult situation. And one of the influences that I see working out all over the planet is that this domination theme is being stimulated by astrological energy so you can see it. Now that means you'll see it in people. You will see it, you will see a lot of aggression come up. We're already seeing that in some of the demonstrations that are happening. Tremendous aggression. This is on the plate for resolution for the whole planet. So rather than just sitting in some place judging others for being or having a reaction that comes out as anger and aggression, watch your own reactions. Does yours arise perhaps as a little bit of judgment now and then? Or a little bit of impatience? Or a belief that things should be other than they are? You know, if we could snap our fingers and suddenly make everything return to the way it was previously, know this, it would be good for some of you. But there's a whole lot of humanity for whom it wouldn't be so good. And for those people, it's still not so good. If you look at the lower end of the pay scales in many countries, certainly all over the West, the people who are really saving the planet right now are the people who are paid the least. But what must be addressed this year also is the wanton destruction to your precious planet. In so many situations, when humans decide they want the precious resources that are hidden within the mother's body, they open up these, they're called mining operations, where the mother's body is unceremoniously torn up. Sometimes her mountains are just ravaged. Her streams are polluted sometimes, her rivers, with very toxic chemicals. You know, some of what is in the ground maybe needs to stay there. It provides a service in the earth, and it provides perhaps riches when people take it out of the earth. But the processes for doing that are poisoning people, poisoning fish, birds, all animals. And unfortunately, while this all seems to be good for civilization as it is known today, maybe there's another way to do civilization. Hopefully, that will be something you all explore. But the way it's done today is not sustainable for the planet. In other words, how high shall we raise civilization in terms of convenience if we kill the planet and there is no place for civilization to be experienced? What is truly civilized is when you sit down with one another in a space of love and compassion. And you share your stories of what it is to be human. And you try to raise what you take from each other into the space of being fully human. Now think about that. You know, in my own training, well, it was a little bit different. I was in Tibet, and I spent many, many lives there. In fact, many spiritual beings have done this with both India and Tibet. The very soil of those countries carries the spiritual energy. And frankly, my own tradition, the Tibetan Buddhist, is maybe a little bit different than other factors of Buddhism, not much. But the thing about it is, you see, in Tibet, the Tibetan Buddhism really comes out of India. Our great masters, yes, the Buddha, where did he start? He started in India. And the great early Tibetan masters were all students of Vedanta. They all learned this incredible reality that sages of old were able to tune into. Now, you see, they didn't have television. They didn't have a lot of books to read. And so they really sat around trying to figure out how creation works. They are the ones that intuited the power of sound. And they brought forth very powerful uses of sound. You know them as mantra. But let me tell you about the ancient Indian masters. Some of them were so powerful. People would come to them with very human wishes, like such as this, and say, well, you know, I'm a farmer and my neighbor's a farmer. And last year he had a better crop than I had, and he made more money than I did. Could you please give me a mantra to say that will make the rain and the sunshine fall on my property, but not his? Now, there were those who could actually do things like that. And unfortunately, this was a time of falling off, of some, not all. There were purity that stayed through it all, but some sold indulgences. So what that means is you go and you find someone who's very powerful with the use of sound, and you pay them some money. You can get rid of a neighbor you don't like, or someone who's harassing you, or whatever. And of course, the sound works, but this is categorically the wrong way to do it. And so part of the Buddha's coming was a big wake-up call to the ancient Indian masters, because they had to review what this lineage was all about. Now, the ancient lineage is very, very powerful. And if you know what you look for, you can trace it right through Tibetan Buddhism. It is there. In fact, even the Dalai Lama says to someone, asked him several years ago now, said, well, do you think Buddhism is better than, say, Hinduism or Jainism or Sikhism? And he said, oh my, no. He said, we owe everything to the Indian masters. They taught us. And that is true. So you see, the beginning of all spirituality for the planet, and I don't mean that everything comes from this, because certainly there are indigenous spiritual practices that were not part of any long-standing lineage. But in terms of setting the field for the planet, it all goes back to those Vedic masters. And the interesting thing is, used well, Vedanta will be carried into the New Age. And that's really important, because it was the first of any kind of understanding about the human plane and the spiritual plane. It was the first to say, oh, we can transcend or cut through all the illusions that pop up to greet us at the level of physical reality. Now, we really want that to move into the Aquarian age, that understanding. Granted, it can come through any tradition, because that tradition was first. And the beauty of it is still available to people today. Now, every now and then I have students in their minds kind of scold me. They say, well, that isn't very Buddhist, which tells me two things. Number one, they don't understand Buddhism. And number two, they don't understand that I'm not Buddhist anymore. And I mean, you don't need a tradition when you become an ascended master, believe me. And you know, we have the whole cosmos, which is it's a huge celebration of the divine. All those stars that come into relationships and form galaxies, each supporting numerous solar systems. How can that not be a celebration of joy? And so you see, at the vastest level, this is what the divine is. You're living at a time when many people are focused on how hard it is, or some, how bad it is. Now, this has to come up. I know it isn't pretty, but it has to come up because these are some of the flawed uses of patriarchal energy that came out of the Piscean age. And if we are to dismantle those older forms of energies, which are not really helpful, and they won't be helpful going on, the planet has too many people on it right now to engage in those old forms of, I would say, government, but it isn't just government. It came into religion. It certainly came into the family. It came into educational systems. And so we have to look at all of this and envision something new. Now, be very careful about using the word better. I know that's tempting, and I hope it will feel better to all of you to be rid of those heavier Piscean energies. The Piscean age did some wonderful things. We have this technology because of the latter evolution of consciousness in the latter Piscean age. It was also an age of education, an age of teaching and learning. In fact, it was an age that produced many great teachers, spiritual teachers. The Buddha came just a little bit before we actually, about 500 years before we actually marked the beginning of the Piscean age. But you see, the Indian masters had been there far longer. They go back, way back. In fact, some scholars who have looked into it have said that there were versions of Shaivism, which is not let's say, the way people would honor the deity Shiva today. But there were some versions that have gone back as far as 8,000 to 10,000 years. So you see, this tradition is very old. Yes, it has moved and changed over time. That's life. You move and change over time. You know, your bodies don't look like they looked when you were 5 or 15 or 30. You see, as you move along, things change. And the Buddha always pointed out that one of the biggest reasons that people suffer is because things change. But people suffer for all kinds of change. You have the perfect relationship with someone and something happens and it changes. Or you have children who adore you when they're young, and then they become teenagers. And it's kind of hard to find that adoration, isn't it? Because they're trying to develop their own way in life and figure out who they are. And those of you who have raised teenagers know this very well. Who they are then is not who they're going to be when they become fully realized as an adult. And hopefully they won't be the same person at 30 that they were at 20, nor at 50 who they were at 30. The whole idea is to grow and become wiser. That's what life is about. So you can see it is really your school, isn't it? Life is your school. But what are you learning? Are you just learning how to accumulate all those digital toys? They're helpful. Without them, we could not do this. But how many is enough? How much of other things is enough? You see, one of the things the ego mind does, you remember the Buddha taught there are basically 3 categories of kleshas. Actually, I think there's only one, but he divided it up into 3. There is greed, there is hatred, and there is delusion. And if we look back to the ancient Vedantic system where time packages are much, much larger, we learned that we are now living in the age of Kali Yuga, which is an age of confusion. And it is said that the first age was a golden age. And that was when the people who lived on earth were gods and goddesses who just took human form. They were always completely connected with their source. They knew who they were. They recognized the divine in each other. And at that time, plants really flourished because they had this wonderful spiritual level. And then it is said that was followed by a silver age, an age of remembering who God was. And so stories were devised that told children who the divine was. And there were great ones who were the heroes of such stories that always remembered who they were. All that then was followed by a Bronze Age. And in the old tradition, what it said was that when it comes, it will be an age of theology, which is what? Speculating who God is or who the divine is. Each one coming up with a different theory, you see. And beyond that, there would be a Stone Age. And that's what you're in now, actually, according to that old system. And the Stone Age, it was said that technology would be seen as God. Now, this was said thousands of years ago. And yet, you know, you now have to look at, what is God to you? Is it the power that you feel when you use technology? For some, that's it. They're very powerful. They can hack anybody's system. They can get into anybody's bank account. That's real power. But it's delusion. And it's really categorically apt for this age. And so you must deal with not only illusions arising, but completely deluded mind. That's what this age is about. It's to reveal it to you. So you can't simply trust that you're getting accurate information anymore, whether it's coming out of the mouth of a leader, whether it is some compelling story or video on the internet. You can't take anything on face value. Now, on the one side, many people say that's very sad, and I understand that. But what is it teaching you? It is teaching you discernment. That is, if you wake up and use your discernment. This is what Earth is asking of you now. Use your discernment. But don't do it from a space where you just start checking everything off and saying, well, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad. That's not discernment. That is judgment. And usually, judgment is very self-serving. It's not there really to help you have a better understanding of what the truth is. It's usually used from maybe an arrogant standpoint, where I'm above all that, or I don't need this, or whatever it is. And this brings us really to look at what each of you is trying to gain in the development of your spirituality at this particular time. I hope you are all really looking to your spirituality. But one of the conditions of humanity is, while many people say they want that, they don't want to move out of their comfort zone. You know, life's pretty good. I'll do that in my next life. But you see, you don't really know that you will even have a human birth in your next life. You don't know that for sure. You have one now. And, you know, most of you have had many of them. But here's the thing. Not many of you have actually observed what it is like when someone, let's say, gets lost in the snow and they're freezing to death. You know, these rescue people who go up into the mountains and find people who've been caught in an avalanche or in some other way in an accident. Maybe they were skiing and they broke an ankle or something and they're out on the mountain all night long. It's very cold. They go up to rescue them. And if they are in the process of advanced hypothermia, it is very hard to wake them up. You know, normally they would be so excited to see their rescuers. Oh, good, you can take me out of here. I can't walk, help me. But no, they say, oh, it's so beautiful to sleep in the snow. Just let me go back to sleep. Because you see, the body-mind is changing as that hypothermia sets in. Now, partly that's the brain, but the brain is the vehicle that generates, or let's say facilitates, certain acts of awareness. You can't be physically aware without a brain. Now, you're still aware, but you're not so much aware of your body. So when this person is freezing, all they want to do, they're freezing from their feet up, probably can't even feel their feet by this time. But all they want to do is go back to sleep in the beautiful snow. Now, rescuers see this all the time, and they know you got to get this person up, or they're not going to stay in the body long. But you see, that's kind of the way I look at so many of my spiritual students. Just let me go back to sleep. Just let me have my good life. So this is the time for you to think about these things. Really, let it in. What do you want with your life? What do you want to leave as your legacy? Legacies often don't last that long. Some of you have noticed that, say, a parent dies, and suddenly other people in your parent, and maybe the nieces and nephews and children a generation or so away, it's not long before they lose all reality on that person. And you show them maybe an article that was very precious to that person, and it means nothing to them because they no longer can sustain the energetic connection. And so legacies don't last very long, but still you should think about what you want to be remembered for. Not to aggrandize the ego, but to fulfill your purpose. Can you see there's a difference there? There really is a difference. To fulfill your purpose, the value of having attained a good life, that should never be wasted, my dear friends.